Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Petra, and this is Barnaby.
And we're here at Wildcat Hollow Farm. Video for you, garden update.
Hi, today we're going to show you our gardens. We're going to start off here in the barn garden and show you around to what's been going on here, what's been growing. And why don't y'all come on in and follow me. Okay, down here we have our zucchini plants. As you can see, they're doing fine. This one got hit by vine borers and we treated it with neem oil twice, and it looks like we caught it, and it's actually doing quite well again. We did have 6 plants here. Now there's only 5 left and they're all doing well, and we have a lot of bugs today. Behind me you can see the corn. This is strawberry corn, which is a popcorn. It's just starting to put up tassels here and doesn't have any corn in it developing yet, but it will soon, I hope. It's doing very good. It's nice and green, and we hope that we're gonna be getting a lot of popcorn off of it. Okay, here behind the squash, the zucchini, is my favorite spot. It's my sunflowers. These is a dwarf variety. They're called Fantasia, and they grow very bushy and short, as you can see. They range in a color from very light yellow here on the side to a dark red, and they're plainly beautiful, and I hope that we're going to be able to save a lot of seeds because I'm going to be planting them everywhere. I just love those. They are so pretty. They have multiple, as you can see, on every stalk. There's like 5, 6, 7 flowers. It's just awesome. I love those. Here in the next row, we have tomatoes, which is not hard to tell. Behind me, growing like weeds, is the Cherokee purples, which are just starting to set through in here. There's quite a lot of them inside here, little ones already. And I've never had these before, so I'm very excited. And
I love Cherokee purples.
I really wonder what they're going to taste like because we don't have that type in Germany. So I'm really excited about that. The ones in the front here, those are German Queen. And considering I'm German, I've still not had those before, so I'm excited to see what they will turn out to. But as you can see, they're not as bushy as the Cherokees, and they're kind of straggly compared to them. But we'll see how they turn out. In between all the tomatoes, as you can see, I have planted here marigolds, different variations, tall ones and small ones. And they're starting to bloom now and really look nicely, and hope to keep the bugs off of the tomatoes. Okay, we are now in the middle of the garden, I'd say. In the middle bed here, we have already harvested all the potatoes that were in here. We had potatoes growing in here, and we got about 20 pounds out of this little lot here. And we have already replanted it and put corn on one side, and you can see here it's already sprouting. And right next to me we have planted some beets, and we have already one little tiny one coming up. Here also we have already put a second planting in. On this side here we had the peas growing, and we've already harvested all of those and saved some to dry, so we will have some seeds for next planting. And in this row and on the other side we have replanted potatoes already, and in the middle you can see a single surviving tall sunflower. I had a few planted in here, but most of them got knocked down when we had that storm of a little while ago. This is the only surviving one here of the big ones. We will see more later on in the other garden. Here on this side we had onions. We harvested about almost 100 onions out of here, and we have replanted this with cabbage, and we already have one little tiny cabbage plant coming up. Here at the end of the right side of the garden we have a trellis, and on that trellis we have cucumbers growing. I mistakenly planted dark cucumbers here, which are actually not very viney, they're more bushy, but they are climbing just a little bit, as you can see here, so it was my mistake. It's not gonna climb all the way over the trellis, but it does climb a little, and I think it's thankful for the support, and they sure are giving us very beautiful, nice little dark cucumbers. Under here we have broccoli. Our broccoli has been hit by Japanese beetles, and probably also by a rat or a rabbit. We don't know exactly. We've had some traps out here trying to catch something but didn't. But something definitely ate most of this broccoli and probably had a good time doing it. So we're probably not going to harvest any of this, and it might get pulled out at some point. We're here on the left side of the garden, of the barn garden, and here already we have also replanted some stuff. We have planted some more potatoes on this side. Before then we had turnips in here that are already harvested, and
our one surviving kohlrabi.
And we had kohlrabi in here, and this one is actually the only one that kind of looks almost like it's going to be a kohlrabi. In the next row we have some surviving bush beans, and we also had the rabbit or something had holes dug in here, which is why this row is almost empty. We do have some carrots in here that Michael replanted, and they actually have grown. We were thinning out the oxheart carrots.
It was a transplant experiment. I didn't know if I could thin out a row and bring the other ones over here and plant them to see if they would live, but it seems that they worked.
The original patch is over there on the other side of the trellis. That's where the oxheart planted, and the parts that he thinned out, he planted it here. And as you can see, they are doing really well, and I think we're going to get quite a few more carrots out of this. Behind me is some more carrots of the thinned out ones, and the rest of our lettuce. The lettuce has almost been picked, and we've pulled out the rest of it because it's been starting to grow very tall and bolted, and so we did get a lot out of this though. And on the trellis here we have noodle beans that are now finally starting to take off and starting to climb up the trellis. As with many other things, we had to replant the noodle beans like 2 times at least, because we planted them too early and then it was too wet and it didn't want to grow. But now they're finally taking off. On the side behind me, you can see that they're not doing as well. This side is kind of skimpy compared to the other side, but also here they're starting to grow up now and go up the trellis. In between here, the trellis and the corn, our beautiful strawberry corn, which you can see now is tasseling out quite well. We have another patch of bush beans that we've been harvesting off, and this patch looks quite well. And behind here, behind the bush beans, we have some
Oxheart
carrots. This is the original patch of the oxheart carrots that are doing nicely. We've already harvested quite a few of them.
Pull one.
But let me see if I can find one that's fairly decent size here. This is one of the smaller sized ones, oxheart carrots. They're very, very good. They get bigger than this, but of course the little ones, as with all other things, are a bit tender and sweeter. In between here we have also some garlic planted that we've harvested some greens off and eaten in salads, and this is going to stay in until next year to harvest. I am here in the tomatoes, as you can see. On my left is the Rutger Tomatoes. I planted these directly in the ground because we tried starting tomatoes indoors and it was just too cold, so nothing germinated. Or actually they did germinate, but they died off really, really fast because it was way too cold in our basement where we live. And so I got kind of upset and just kind of threw all the rest of the seeds that we had out here, and was really surprised when they all germinated. So
all of them. We have 40 tomato plants.
So now we have a whole bunch of tomatoes, probably more than we need, and they're all growing spectacularly. We have 2 sets of tomatoes here in this garden. This row, as I said, is Rutger tomatoes, and they're all starting to set fruit now. They're look very healthy so far, even though it's been very hot. This side here is on this side of the trellis. We have yellow pear tomatoes. These seeds were from Baker Creek. We got those as a gift when we bought seeds there in the spring. They gave us a free sample of yellow pear tomatoes, and this is what these are. So I'm very excited about those. On the other side, we have cherry tomatoes, and also those are growing very, very good. They're starting to really take off and get big. And the only thing I do at the moment is prune the bottoms, so there's no leaves touching the ground, and I try to prune as little as possible. Just when they get way too bushy, I take some out so they will have some airflow and don't get diseases too easily. But that's basically all I do, is try to keep them off the ground and not get too bushy and too tangled. Here in the next rows we have bush beans again, as you can see. Out here in the in-ground garden, they're not doing quite as well as they are in the barn garden. They're much smaller, as you can see, and they've been a little sunburned for some reason, and not doing as well as in the other garden. I have planted in between the bush beans. I have chamomile that is starting to bloom now. On the other side here, we already harvested, let me think, I think we had turnips in here, if I'm not mistaken. And the broccoli here on this side is looking much better than it did in the barn garden. So it must be the differences of the soil, I don't know. But this one here is looking quite healthy, but it also doesn't have any heads yet. We're still gonna leave it be and wait for a little while longer before we decide what to do with it and give it some more chance. Here in this row, I have already replanted carrots, and in between here we can see I have planted
Sage,
no, not
rosemary, thyme.
thyme. Thank you very much. Sometimes I just have to
We just missed the parsley.
remember the words. Yeah, I have thyme in here. This is the normal type garden thyme that I've sown in here, and it's growing nicely. It's going to be transplanted in various places of the farm where it can just do its thing. On the other side, we have the same set of tomatoes again that we have growing in the beginning. So
We have lots and lots of tomatoes.
here's another row of Rutger and another row of yellow pear and cherry. We are here in the second row of the garden. As you can see, this is all our pepper plants. These are the same as the tomatoes. I did the same thing. We started these indoors and they didn't germinate worth anything, and so I threw just basically everything in the garden. And also they all germinated, so now we also have a lot of pepper plants. We've given tomato plants and pepper plants away because we have so many now. Well, what we have left here is, let me see if I can get it right. These two rows here are lipstick peppers, which is, as the name suggests, a red variety that's kind of oblong. And these are all sweet peppers. This row here is a golden pepper something. It's a yellow pepper, and this row here is a purple sweet pepper. So that's all our pepper plants. And
does that mean we're purple pepper peeper?
Yeah, something like that. And in the bed next to it, we have a whole bunch of marigolds growing, and the radishes that have been growing in there were already harvested, and I have some more bush beans that I've planted in here, and I can see just now that they are starting to come up here. Over here on the side we have some more tomatoes that are going totally bonkers. As you can see, they're growing all over the place. These tomatoes and also these peppers we bought after our germination disaster in the spring indoors that didn't work out, and we went off and we bought some at the store. These are our heirlooms still. These are Mr. Stripey tomatoes, and there's actually quite a few on here already in nice sizes, but they're still green.
Fried green tomatoes.
But they are, I have not done anything with these tomatoes, I just let them go, which is why they are totally wild, growing everywhere.
Well, to let you know how big they are, Petra's 5'3". The plants are the same height she is.
Yes. And they are growing as the ones in the barn garden in my homemade tomato cages that I made from various twigs and branches here off the farm. But they're holding up really well, and they're holding up this plant, which is really got some weight on it already now, and it's going everywhere. But they're holding up really rather well, which is surprising to me because I thought they would be falling apart. But they're doing fine, and we have lots of flowers on here, and I hope we're going to be having lots of tomatoes of this. The peppers are also, we already have a couple of peppers growing here. We have a yellow one and a red one, I think. This is the red one. This is, let me see, another red one, and this is a yellow one here. But these are also store-bought, and which is why they're a lot bigger than our home-grown ones, varieties.
Not by much.
And also here I have, as you can see, some marigolds planted in between.
I hate some. Marigolds are nasty.
And here on the side is some of my seeds. I have some yarrow planted here that we got seeds at Baker Creek. Those are pastel colored yarrow. They are supposed to have various colors from white to pink. From what I can tell now, they might or might not be colored. Here is the sage next to it, growing the sage that I just threw out here a couple weeks ago at most. Here in the next row, we have a trellis that has gourds growing on it. As you can tell, those gourds are going totally bonkers. They've just started taking off like the past, I'd say, probably week or so. They have overgrown this whole trellis and are doing great. We've already got a couple of fruit on here. We have
Birdhouse.
birdhouse gourds on here and Ozark egg gourds, which are really neat. They produce little tiny gourds that look just like eggs. Here on the side we have some more of the pretty sunflowers that are a bit later. I planted these later, so they're not quite blooming yet. And if we keep on going here to the next aisle, we have some lettuce growing here. This is our last lettuce that we have here now that needs to be harvested soon.
We've had lettuce coming out of our ears
Yeah,
for the
we've
past month and a
planted
half.
little too much lettuce. So this is going to be the last for a while, I think. Behind it we have another trellis. And on this trellis we have melons growing on both sides. They are just really starting to grow now. Those are Tiga melons, also seeds from Baker Creek, and they are starting to grow nicely now. And I can't wait for them to grow over this trellis and produce some nice melons for us. Over here on the end of this aisle we have, I've replanted some beans. These are also the noodle beans, the Chinese noodle beans. This little tripod here we used to have sitting outside with the three sisters. And in this spot we had peas growing before, sugar snap peas, but the sugar snap peas got kind of watered out, flooded out. We had so much rain and they rotted out on the roots. So a couple weeks ago we tore them out and we decided to replant something else here. So we got this trellis in here and we planted some noodle beans and they're coming along just fine. My sunflowers that I planted in here have been eaten by mice or rabbits or I don't know what. Something in here definitely likes sunflowers.
It's the
when they're little.
eastern wood rat.
Probably, yeah, like Mike says, the eastern wood rat. But this seems to be the only thing they've eaten is the sunflowers when they're very young.
And the broccoli.
And the broccoli. They've left everything else, which is I'm grateful for because there is lots of stuff here they could eat but didn't. Here in the bed in front of it, we did have more lettuce in it. That's already harvested and already torn out, the rest of it, and we have replanted this with kohlrabi, but there's nothing come up yet. We are here in our last row, or in between our last two rows I should say. These are our big sunflowers, as you can see. Those are autumn beauties, and as you can see the stem is so big my hand fits just around it, and it's every bit of, let's say, what, 7 foot tall?
It's closer to 8.
Or closer to 8 foot tall. And
you're 5'3". It's 3 foot over your head.
They bloom an orange color, and they're just starting to open up over here, and I'm excited to see them when they're really open.
Alright, to give you a size comparison, I'm 6'3". I can reach an 8-foot ceiling. So that tells you how tall these things are, and they're still growing. And we have Barnaby behind me. Photobomb. Cut.
Here we are at the far end of our ingrown garden. This is our squash patch, I would say, squash and melon patch. And about 10 days ago there was hardly anything here, and in the last week and a half this has exploded. What you see here on the ground in front of me is butternut squash. There's I think probably 2, 3, 4 plants of it, maybe 5. I'm not quite sure. There's 1, 2, I think it's 4 plants. That's butternut squash. On the trellis here behind me, as you can see, just absolutely awesome growing up this trellis is a Camo squash. Seeds also here we got from Baker Creek. I've never seen the squash before. I just bought it basically from the description and the size because it's a very
It's a small decorative.
It's a small, no, it's not decorative, it's actually edible. Supposed to be very good, and but not very big, which is why I planted it on this trellis, because if you plant stuff on it that gets too heavy, naturally you're going to have trouble with it falling off once it puts fruit on. The Camo squash is supposed to be not so huge, so we're hoping, and I'm thinking from the way it's growing, that we're going to have quite a few of those. On the other side, we have another squash variety. This one actually is, I think, 90% decorative. It's called a little... I can't think of it.
Senility setting in.
Yeah, it is.
Brain fart.
Yeah, I can't think of it. Little something. It looks like a Halloween pumpkin, but in tiny, basically. It only gets about that size, and it's orange and looks like the original Halloween pumpkin, just in miniature. And Jack Little, that's what it's called. That was easy, wasn't it? Jack Little. And it's growing up the trellis nicely now. It's a little bit behind this one. Doesn't grow as much, but looks like it's doing well. Back here behind the trellis is another small squash variety called Little Dumpling. That's also supposed to be very good eating, very sweet, and not very big, which is why I chosen these squash varieties, because there's only two of us. And
Small squash for a small people.
yeah, exactly. Small squash for small people. We don't eat an abundance of squash at one meal, so small squash is always good. Well, that's the squash. 4 different types here. And here next to the squash patch is our melon patch. We also had to replant this because I planted it too early. It was not warm enough and it was way too wet before. So the first seeds that I planted some otome watermelons at the first round that I planted, and they didn't germinate at all. And when I went through the hills, after a while they were gone. So either they got washed out or they got eaten by birds, we're not sure. But I've replanted everything here, and now, as you can see, everything is growing nicely. We have here in the front, we have watermelon. This is, Mike, help me.
Cantaloupe. Is that cantaloupe?
No, watermelon. The small
Sugar babies.
Yeah, the sugar babies. The sugar baby watermelons, which are also a small variety of watermelons. They also come in a bushy variety, I've heard. Next year I will try those, because obviously we don't have the big spaces. This is not the bush variety. This is
It's the vine, the runner.
The vine variety. And so far it's doing really good, though. I've seen that we've already have a few little baby melons on here. And I'm hoping they're going to be okay with this space. But these are the sugar babies, and in the back over here we have growing cantaloupes. Those already also are doing fine. They had bazillions of flowers on it, so I'm hoping that they're going to produce some nice fruit. And here next to the melon patch, and next to our beautiful sunflowers, we have some more corn. This is a different variety. This is painted corn. It's looks totally different than the other variety over in the barn garden. And as you can see, it's already setting some nice cobs on here. And this is a very decorative corn, but also edible. So I'm hoping to have two purposes out of these, using them for decorations, just like the strawberry corn can be used also around autumn time, and also eating them, of course. I've read up and I've heard, and you've also probably heard, that you're not supposed to plant corn within a certain range next to each other. We have two varieties of corn growing here, about, what do you think, Mike, how many feet those are apart?
90.
About 90 feet apart. We have two varieties. We're thinking and hoping it's not going to be a problem with cross-pollination, because they have different stadiums. The strawberry corn is much later. It's just now starting to put tassels out, whereas this one has already got corn on it.
This is mountain something corn.
This is painted mountain
Painted
corn.
mountain.
Painted mountain corn, and the other one is strawberry corn. And so we're hoping that it's not going to be any problems, but we will definitely be able to tell you next year at this time, because we're going to be saving some seeds and replanting them next year, and then we can tell you whether we have funky looking corn next year or not.
Alright, for the next minute or so you get to stare at the ugly guy. This is my three sisters experiment. And at the beginning of it, I put a bunch of eggs and coffee grounds in the middle, planted everything. I was pretty haphazard with it on purpose. Didn't really space anything, I just planted it. Well, so far we've gotten more than 30 pounds of yellow squash off of it. The corn is producing ears, and the beans are actually growing up in between. You can't even see them because the squash is so thick. And while I got you here and I'm talking, we hit 350 subscribers on YouTube. We've got 430 some on Facebook. We'd like to thank all of you. I know some of you kind of cross mingle. If you're on Facebook, go over and like our YouTube channel to jump the numbers up a bit. We'd appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, yep, and I was told that I have to do a panoramic here, so that'll be right here at the end of the video. Alright, this is where the old chicken barn stood at. And it's got 20 plus years of composted chicken doo-doo in it. So things are really growing well. And I'm panning around here so you can see where the in-ground garden is at. And it's actually doing a lot better than what we thought it was going to do, considering this ground has never been planted before. So there you have it. Garden panorama